Hello, I'm Beth, and this is Social Leopards. Today, I'm talking about a feeling that sneaks into nearly every new opportunity, challenge, and leap we take: imposter syndrome. Or, as I've come to think of it, the messy middle of becoming. When I think about what it means, for me, it's all about stepping into something new, but it doesn't quite feel like it fits yet. Maybe you've started a job that feels slightly out of your league. Maybe you're trying a creative project that excites and terrifies you. Maybe you're in the middle of a big personal change, building a business, starting school again, learning to set boundaries, and you catch yourself thinking, who do I think I am? So maybe that's actually how to properly define imposter syndrome. It's the emotional hangover of growth. Nobody tells you that between not knowing and knowing lies a long stretch of uncomfortable middle. You're not a beginner anymore, but you're not confident yet either. You're just becoming. And that's not fraudulence, it's development. But it feels like fraudulence. It feels like everyone else has a laminated badge labeled qualified human, and you're standing there holding a half-crumpled Post-it note that says, still figuring it out. You know what, though? Most people feel exactly like that sometimes. The reasons vary, but at the end of the day, it's about which people are just better at hiding it behind either forced confidence or rehearsed presentations. We tend to think of imposter syndrome as a confidence problem, and social media sometimes uses it as a way to diss someone, like an accusation. But it's really a belonging problem. It shows up when you've stepped into a place that hasn't yet caught up with your own self-concept. Your brain says, hold on, this version of me hasn't earned the right to be here yet. But growth doesn't issue permission slips. You can't audit your way into belonging. The only way through is to keep showing up while you're still learning who you are in this new version of yourself. I remember the first time I stepped into a leadership role at work. Too many years ago to admit, I'm going to tell you that much. My title changed overnight, but my internal narrative, it lagged about probably 6 months behind. Every meeting, I'd wait for someone to realize I didn't really know what I was doing. I was suddenly supervising people who were my peers last week. It was scary and awkward, and for a few people, not well received. I had visions of being quietly escorted out by HR with a polite, "Thanks for playing, Beth, but we've discovered you're just pretending." That feeling didn't vanish overnight. What finally shifted was the realization that nobody else was ready either. They were just doing the thing. Some days, they nailed it. Other days, they stumbled and adjusted, just like I did. And that was the job. There's no magical point when you suddenly wake up and think, yes, I'm officially qualified for all the things I now do. You've just started to accumulate evidence over time that you can survive the messy middle. For me, it was when another manager came to me for advice. The confidence you want does feel a bit like faking it at first, but doing your best each day is pretty much all you can expect of yourself. For me, I literally had to remind myself that someone else trusted me to be this leader, and I needed to step up and take deep breaths and keep on plugging in, learning, and growing. And I did. Now, imposter syndrome thrives in silence. It's in that unspoken assumption that everyone else has it figured out. So let's drag it out into the light and name some of its favorite disguises. First, there's the expert trap. You believe you can't contribute until you've mastered everything. You hold yourself back because you think knowledge equals legitimacy. Then there's the comparison loop. You look around and assume everyone else's highlight reel represents their reality. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Next, there's the overachiever's bargain. You try to work twice as hard to prove you belong, which temporarily quiets the doubt but burns you out in the process. And finally, there's the readiness myth. You wait to feel ready before you act, not realizing that readiness comes from acting. Each of these mindsets is basically your brain's clumsy attempt at self-protection. It's trying to keep you safe from embarrassment, rejection, or failure, but it ends up keeping you small instead. Each one has a way of delaying your growth. Taking risks can be tough, but they're actually necessary to prevent, for lack of a better term, life paralysis. Here's something I wish I'd learned earlier. Growth never feels comfortable while it's happening. We kind of romanticize it after the fact. In hindsight, growth looks like it's noble and empowering, but in real time, it's messy, uncertain, and awkward. Like the emotional version of growing out your bangs, you know you'll like the end result eventually, but in the meantime, you're just trying to make it look halfway decent while you get there. Imposter syndrome is also tricky because it doesn't always sound like self-doubt. Sometimes it hides behind perfectionism. That's a trait I fight against, but I know it's going to be hanging out with me for the rest of my life. It's that subtle voice that says, I just want to do it right. But right is often a code for flawless, and flawless is a code for impossible. So maybe it's time to reframe imposter syndrome altogether. You're not an imposter for learning in public. You're just someone willing to grow out loud. In fact, the people who look like they have it all figured out, they're probably just further along in their messy middle phase. If you're waiting to feel confident before you act, you'll wait forever. Confidence is the byproduct of repeated discomfort. It's earned in real time, through mistakes, through recalibrations, and by showing up again the next day. I sometimes think about how toddlers learn to walk. They don't sit on the floor overthinking the biomechanics of balance. They try, fail, sometimes they cry, and then they get up again and they try again. There's no internal monologue saying, I must be a terrible walker. They just keep going. We forget that's how adults grow too. The only difference is we add self-consciousness. So what can you do when imposter syndrome starts whispering in your ear? First, pause and label it. It's that messy middle again. Naming it creates distance between you and the thought. You can't reason with a vague sense of inadequacy, but you can work with something specific. Second, collect real evidence. Write down moments, big or small, where you handled something well, learned something new, or showed up when it mattered. Those reminders become your personal anti-imposter portfolio. Third, talk about it seriously. Find someone you trust and admit, hey, I'm feeling a little imposter-y right now. More often than not, they'll respond, hey, I totally get it. That's me too. Fourth, act before you feel ready. Readiness is a moving target. The more you wait for it, the farther away it drifts. Oh, wow, I just got like this weird flash of one of those nightmares. You're walking down the narrow hallway toward a door, and the faster you head toward the door, the further the door gets from where you are in the moment. So finally, treat yourself with the same grace you'd give anyone else who's learning. You wouldn't tell a friend, you don't deserve that opportunity until you're perfect. You'd say, you're doing great, keep going. So extend that same courtesy towards yourself. I want to chat a little more about that last part for a moment, the keep going part. The messy middle is temporary, but quitting, well, that just cements the story that you never belonged. Continuing, even while uncertain, rewrites that story. You don't grow into belonging by waiting to feel worthy. You grow into it by repeatedly being there, one awkward, uncertain step at a time. And yes, you'll have days where you think, who let me in here? But if you zoom out, those are usually the same days you're doing something new, something that stretches you just a bit beyond your comfort zone. That's not fraudulence, that's expansion. Here's something I've come to believe about success. It's not about mastering everything. It's about tolerating the discomfort of still learning. You want to know a secret? I recently struggled with imposter syndrome as it relates to this podcasting journey. When Bea moved on, I was genuinely afraid of continuing on without her and nearly threw in the towel. But then I realized that doing this fuels some sort of passion inside me. Last season, I'm going to admit I kind of used those essays from my Substack obsession to sort of replace my co-host, And they kind of carried me as I worked on feeling more comfortable wearing this solo podcasting pair of shoes. And not to toot my own horn, but I feel like this season, I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. Do I have more growing to do? Absolutely. And I'm also thinking about a second podcast with ideas that are already filling my laptop as a side hobby to my side hobby. Even though I'm not sure what direction this is going to go long term, I'm finally gaining the confidence that I am a legit podcaster and will be hanging out for the conceivable future. I think one of the things that keeps me going is this. When you realize that everyone you admire is still figuring something out behind the scenes, that nobody feels fully qualified all the time, you start to see imposter syndrome for what it is. And that's a universal, slightly annoying side effect of growth. The goal isn't to eliminate it. It's to recognize it, smile at it, and keep doing your thing anyway. In other words, imposter syndrome is your brain's sign that you're stretching. That's not failure. That's progress with side effects. You're building confidence. No, wait, let's call it evidence for a future version of yourself who looks back and says, hey, I was ready all along. I just didn't know it yet. So if you're in that uncomfortable in-between right now, if you're learning and stretching and fumbling through, know this. You're not behind. You're just in the middle of becoming someone new. And that's the bravest, most human place to be. And I think that might be a good place to wrap up today's conversation. I hope you share your thoughts with me. Feel free to like and comment because that helps me on a personal level to leave my own imposter syndrome in the dust. Also, if you know of anyone who may benefit from hearing today's chat, please share this episode with them. Until next time, I encourage you to keep showing up, keep learning out loud, and keep doing the thing, even if you have to do it with your knees shaking. You belong here, even if your brain hasn't caught up to the fact yet. Take care.